Hello, I'm Dr. John Kavanagh, also known as Senator John Kavanagh, your instructor. And today we have a roundtable discussion to familiarize you with legislative staff. And we're going to have 4 staff members, 2 partisan staff, and 2 nonpartisan staff, as you remember from our prior lessons. And they're going to basically talk about themselves and their jobs, and maybe some other ancillary questions I'll throw out. So the 4 of them are, going from my left to right, Josh Credit. He is the chief of staff for the majority party, the Republican Party in this particular case. Then to his left is Jenna Lyon. She is nonpartisan. She is the deputy sergeant at arms, who is also in charge of the interns and the pages, which might be positions that you might be interested in, because we have university and college students who take those roles. Moving around the table, we have Liam Maher. He is a research staff director. He is nonpartisan staff. And again, he kind of heads up all of the different nonpartisan researchers that are assigned mostly to committees and specific subject areas that help us write the bills and answer questions for us on not only bills, but a legislator anytime during the year can ask research staff to look into different things they might be interested in. And finally, we have Paulino Valero, who is the chief of staff for the Democrat Party, the minority party. He is Josh's counterpart, and while they have very similar roles, the roles also obviously diverge. Although things being what they may, they could play musical chairs and shift around, next year. So the names change, but the positions are the same. So I'm going to begin with Josh, and let me ask you the first question. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, both personally and politically?
Yeah, my name's Josh Credit. I'm a born and raised Arizonan. I have 5 kids with my wife who live in Goodyear, Arizona. I went to Arizona State University for undergrad and law school. I've been a Republican my whole life, and didn't necessarily plan to be in politics, but I ended up here.
And you are the majority party chief of staff. Would you tell us what you do?
So as chief of staff, I serve the Senate president and the Republican caucus and try to help make a reality the vision of the president, whether it be with bills, with budget, with decorum. I also hire the majority staffers who serve the majority caucus. Technically, we all serve at the pleasure of the president, but everyone, I guess, works for me. But we all serve at the pleasure of the president, and I really try to just make a reality the vision of leadership, the president pro tem, the majority leader, the majority whip, you as the Senate Appropriations Chair, and really tackling the major issues for the caucus.
So would it be fair to say that you coordinate things, but with a political spin?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm a Republican, so I view things through Republican lens. I obviously look at what the media thinks. I look at what, the general electorate thinks, what Republican maybe primary voters think, trying to minimize any issues that our members would have, while also, I think, just trying to enact good public policy that I think Republicans stand for.
Would you consider yourself a cat herder?
Yeah, I would consider myself a cat herder. It helps having 5 kids. I'm a middle child, so I'm a peacemaker, and I try to just minimize and put out all the fires every day. And yes, herd the cats.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned, peacemaker. I thought you were going to say you're used to dealing with immature people. That would be appropriate,
I wouldn't say that.
Well, you wouldn't be, but you're a staff member who serves at the pleasure of the brother president. Now, you kind of give me a threefer here, because you have not only been a chief of staff, but when I first met you, I believe you were an attorney for an outside group, the Center for Arizona Policy, which is also a political group that deals with social conservative issues. And then the next time you morphed into my view, you were sitting in the majority counsel's office in the House. So why don't you tell us a little bit about when you were majority counsel? What were you doing there?
So yeah, after I worked for CAP, I was the general counsel for the House, and so I was basically the lawyer for the House of Representatives because we were the majority. I was also the lawyer for the Speaker of the House. I was the lawyer for all of the House Republican members. So you have, all the attorney-client privilege that goes with that. You're trying to help members draft the most legal constitutional bills as much as you can make them constitutional, and also dealing with all the litigation and all of the, personnel issues, the HR issues that come with that.
Right. And then suddenly you disappeared one day, like an alien abduction. And I made a call to the Attorney General's office, and you were there.
Yes, in 2019, the Attorney General Brnovich stole me away to be the assistant chief deputy over there, which was a lot of fun. And so I got to get a new view of the world from the Attorney General's office, an executive agency, really looking at, obviously, if a bill gets passed, signed into law, and gets challenged by an outside group, we would be defending the constitutionality. We would also be handling investigations when the legislature would file those types of complaints. We would do attorney general opinions. We would, it gave me a great new perspective of the world outside the legislature. And then obviously coming back to the legislature has helped me understand that agency, what they can and can't do, and how that fits into the puzzle.
Okay. And was that Attorney General's job? Was that a partisan job, or was that a career civil servant job, or you served it as will, but was there politics involved in that too, or?
Yeah, I was a political appointee, so it was very partisan. Obviously, General Brnovich is a Republican, but trying to help him interact with the legislature, interact with other elected officials, dealing with what types of cases to file, not to file, and so obviously he was term limited, and now you see I'm not over there, so.
And that raises an interesting question, because I was going to say, did you wind up in your current job by happenstance, but you basically are a nomadic political animal, so to speak. So I'm curious, from my perspective, I as I mentioned earlier before the camera went on, I have had my snout in the public trough, but in nonpartisan positions, police officer, college professor, always with a defined benefit pension system, because I was always very much into stability and knowing. But many of you, you're very talented, obviously, so you can do this. But you go from job to job. So do you stay up at night worrying where your next job is, or do you pretty much have a good lay of the land and you know how to maneuver? How does that work?
Well, I feel like I have a good lay of the land these days, but I didn't plan to do this. I actually graduated in 2007, a semester early in December, and I actually didn't have anything to do before law school, so I applied, and I became a Senate intern in 2008. So I was a majority staff intern, and that's how I got my feet wet with all of this process. And then I went to law school, wanted to be a prosecutor, and then when 2011, they didn't have, no governments had any money to hire lawyers, so then that's why I just fell into where I was. So it's, but yeah, I don't necessarily lay awake at night worrying about where I'm going to end up. I feel like as long as you do a good job and you have a good reputation, you'll land on your feet.
Good advice. So let's see. So in 2008, you were an intern. Were you in the basement? Because I was here in 2008 in the house, but I don't remember seeing you as I have throughout the rest of my career.
I was a majority staff intern. So
Okay.
I was actually on the second floor.
Okay.
Serving under President Tim B. and
Okay.
Victor Riches, Wendy Baldo, Michael Hall, those staffers who are still around these days in different capacities I worked.
That's right. Classic names. All right. So you already touched on this a little bit, but what actually prepared you for your current chief of staff job?
I think it's, like I said, being an intern, learning the legislative process, being a lawyer, that gives me a good eye on the law and what, you can and can't do. Being the general counsel, I understand that role. Being the, working at the Attorney General's office. I think all of that. And then obviously, like I said, having 5 kids. So dealing with all the personalities, I'm not going to say egos, but personalities that are involved down here, and trying to help find consensus. Because that's another thing that you really want to do is, when you're in the majority, you're only as powerful if you're 16, in our case, 16 votes stick together on something. The moment they split off, you really lose a lot of that control and power. So trying to find a unifying message. And I think just my background and experience, at that nonprofit you mentioned, I dealt with a lot of controversial issues. So these days, controversial issues don't seem to faze me that much.
That's good. So well, you already kind of touched on this, but so what career advice would you give to somebody who says, I want to be a chief of staff? Is law school necessary, or is it a big plus, or, you know?
Law school is not necessary, but I mean, I do think it is a plus. I think being a page or an intern, I think is just incredibly worthwhile and beneficial. You really can get a taste of the process, see if you like it or not. And then, really your reputation, I can't say enough about that. I mean, people have watched, even if, you didn't know me personally, people knew who I was back then, dealing with very controversial issues. And then, being the general counsel and, you never know who may be your boss one day. So I'll just do a little anecdote. So then Javen Mesnard, he was the Senate staffer who was the intern coordinator for me. And that was in 2008. Well, then when he became speaker at the end of 2016, that's who hired me. So you just never know who will be your boss. And so you should always be nice to everyone.
That's true. And there's an old saying, not mine, but be kind to the people you meet on the way up, because you will meet them on the way down. So it's sage advice. All right, let's move on now to Jenna Lyon. Now we're going to nonpartisan staff. So Jenna is not a political animal. She is a kind of career civil servant, nonpartisan. And she is the Deputy Sergeant at Arms and also in charge of the internship and page programs. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself personally and, I guess professionally, not politically.
So I'm also born and raised in Arizona. Just kind of fell in love with politics at a young age and got into college. And one of my first experiences was working as a page when I was 18. So I came down to the Senate and I just kind of fell in love with the place. Another few things about me from Gilbert, have baby twins right now, about 9 months old. And just, I love this job. It works really well with, work-life balance, but also just a lot of fun. So
you were a page when you were 18. So in a matter of just 4 short years, you've risen to the, just kidding. So let's, besides being in charge of the interns and the pages, you're also the Deputy Sergeant at Arms. What does that entail?
Now, Deputy Sergeant at Arms is a really fun position. Take on the responsibilities of the Sergeant at Arms if he's ever absent. So parliamentary procedure, security on the floor, building security. We also are in charge of building maintenance. Facilities projects. We recently did some construction projects. We got to kind of try out some of that kind of management experience that just kind of taking care of the building, making sure staff are taken care of, buildings taken care of, and our legislators are able to do their job. So as far as the pages go, that's kind of their goal as well, is just to help staff, help members of the public and legislators. So we get to bring in these young professionals who want to get their first experience of the legislative process, and it's just a lot of fun to see them, grow in these sorts of roles and the internship program too.
So you were born and raised in Arizona. What school did you go to?
Went to Gilbert High School. Okay. It's in the ASU.
Go to ASU. All right, seems to be a trend here. Okay. As my class knows, pages are students who get credit to come here, and they basically run errands. They're kind of gophers in uniform, right. Where they get things set up your computer, move notes around, but for the purpose of being able to sit and observe like flies on the wall, and actually see the legislative process, often called sausage making, from a very inside perspective. And I never spoke about what they hear, but I was a cop for 20 years. I have a PhD in criminal justice, and some of the early criminal justice research into the use of force, and we're going back to the 60s and 70s now, professors would send graduate students out to ride with police officers on patrol and basically record their interactions. And one of the interesting things that they discovered was that after a few weeks, the police officers literally forget that the students are there. And some of the officers were engaging in criminal brutality, cursing and hitting people, not even realizing that there were witnesses there. And even more bizarrely, they had to pull some of the graduate students because after a longer period of time, they actually began to adopt the views and opinions of the police. So it kind of shows you that when people are around kind of hanging on the sidelines, everybody else doesn't know they're there. So they really get an unbelievable inside experience. But they also create connections for future jobs. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the position of page for anybody who is listening who might want to, what do they do? How long is it? How do you get the job, interview, whatever?
Absolutely. So yes, being a page is an incredible experience. It's really an all access pass to the legislature. We always say it, the closest you can get to the legislature without being elected. I mean, they are in every meeting, they're seeing it from their point of view. They get to be on the floor, which is a really unique experience. Only a couple of staff members are able to be on the floor and witnessing it from that point of view. But also just getting a really well-rounded view of the legislative process, get to know the members on both parties, and in a nonpartisan way. So sometimes it's hard for pages to be nonpartisan at first, but by the end of session, they actually really like being nonpartisan because they want both sides to be able to trust them and they want to be able to serve in that way. But as far as the job goes, it does involve staffing committees, our floor sections, a lot of errand running, mail delivery, setting up Zoom presentations and things like that. We also have some guest speakers that come in. Legislators will come talk to our pages. We'll do a few little tours. So just really try to get as much experience, firsthand experience as possible.
Yeah. Well, actually, the pages actually installed the TV set when I changed offices. And I actually saw them also putting light bulbs in the hallway. So in addition, it would actually give university students an actual real world job skill should they graduate and not be able to find, that work that they want in, art history or whatever. So
a lot of our pages say, I learned so many things here in this job that I wouldn't have thought, because sometimes we'll be set on a task and we just have to put our heads together and figure it out. And it's a great foot in the door to the legislature. But even if you decide not to go into Arizona politics or stay in this arena, it's just a really great professional experience.
So it's a full semester, and they're pretty much here Monday to Friday in the days.
Yeah, and the great things about the PAGE program is it's a part-time experience, so you can go 2 days a week. And I know a lot of the courses at the community college and universities are alternating days. So we have a Monday, Wednesday staff, and then we have a Tuesday, Thursday staff. So it'd be 2 days a week, and you can continue going to school. And our pages really seem to like that balance of being able to still carry a full course load, but work at the same time.
Sure. But once they're here on that day, they're here till we go. I mean, if we're doing late into the night, they would be here too.
Yep. Yeah, it's 8 to 5, but if committees run long or floor session, we usually stick around too. And
now, you also are in charge of interns.
Yeah.
And the interns are assigned to different committees, I guess, and they do research on issues. How does that work?
Right. So the Arizona Legislative Internship Program is, we think, the premier internship in the state. It's really well known. A lot of people have, got their start through this program, and it has such a strong reputation for good reason. It is a full-time experience. So it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and sometimes even longer hours. We have placements in research, Democratic staff, Republican staff. So all of these folks have some of our interns placed there right now. And it's a great training ground for getting into a full-time position. Almost, a good majority of our research staff, Democratic staff, Republican staff have made their way through the Arizona Legislative Internship Program. So it's a little bit more in depth. Like I said, it's full-time. You're learning a lot more. There's a lot more drafting, depends on your placement, but a lot more research, writing, and special projects. But again, unparalleled access to the process and to the members as well. You really get to know the members.
So are there any extra qualifications you would look for for an intern is going to be doing research versus a page? Like if somebody was interested more in being an intern, should they do some preparation before applying? Because I assume they have to apply, be interviewed, right?
Right. Yeah, there's a two-step interview process. The first round would be at the university, and the second round would be here at the Capitol. We do need interns to have at least 75 credit hours or above. So usually juniors and seniors we're looking for. That's also because it allows them to, ease into the professional career a little bit quicker. But just somebody who has great research skills, writing skills are a huge plus, and just a real desire to learn.
Any major? I mean, do you have to be political science, or can you be, pretty much any major?
To any major. In fact, we always say, we mentioned J.D. Mesnard. He was actually a music major when
Was
he
he really?
applied for the Arizona Legislative Internship Program. And it
Quite a bombshell we just had.
and it actually kind of changed the trajectory of his career because he really found out that he loved it. So we encourage all majors to apply, and it is fun to get all different points of view down here.
Right. Fantastic. I appreciate the input there, especially for the students who are interested in that. All right, let's go on to Liam Maher. He is the research staff director, so he is nonpartisan. And I guess once some of those interns get assigned to you, you also supervise them, but you also supervise full-time staff. So why don't you explain first a little bit about yourself?
My name's Liam Maher. Like I said, I actually was born in New York.
Big plus.
He was on the trend. I did attend. I moved to Mesa, Arizona when I was about 10, and then I went to Arizona State, political science major. I actually wanted to be a lawyer my whole undergrad, and then I'm a little different because about a month before my graduation, I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. But I had a buddy that worked out here, and he said, it's a little unusual, but why don't you graduate and become a page and find out what you want to do down here? Because, I always wanted to be in public service. So I did. I became a house page. Loved it. Loved every second of it. In my first committee, which actually you were on, House Gov, I think Jesse Rita was the chair, and President Peterson was actually the vice chair. There's video. I fell in love with the research position because there was an analyst. She stood up. She presented the bill. You asked questions. She answered them, and you could tell there was a respect and a admiration for them that you trusted what she said. And ever since then, I said that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. And took me a few years, was a page, an admin assistant, and then finally joined House Research. My staff right now, we have 15 full-time staffers, 9 analysts, 4 assistant analysts, and 2 admin. And then, I have 8 interns downstairs as well.
Right. And let's see. So, you're like the kind of the supervisor of all these people too.
Yes.
Excellent. So, so the other job you had was, you actually came right here. You went from college to page so you weren't a gypsy like some other people I won't mention.
I'm a homegrown talent.
Excellent. What do you think prepared you in particular for the research job?
Honestly, just being part of the process through the page program and then becoming an admin. Like the best thing that ever happened to me, I've said this to my former research director. When I was at Page, I wanted to be in research. I knew I wanted to be in research, but to know about things. So she said, you have to wait a year. Mm-hmm. And then I literally fell into becoming an admin assistant, was asked on like December 30th because they had a shortage, and became an admin assistant. That made me learn the process through a different lens and getting members prepared for floor session and committee session. And then the following year, there was an opening for research. I got the job because she said I recited the legislative process better than anybody. And it's because I had multiple years learning from different angles of how to do the job.
And what was your major in college?
Political science.
Okay, that's fitting. So let's forget your supervisory role in research. Let's say that, like, when you were actually a research person. Mm-hmm. So how would your day work? Who would assign you? What would you do?
So originally it was an assistant analyst, which assistant analysts help out, obviously, the committee analysts. They have multiple committees. So my assistant analyst here, I had Ways and Means, Education, and Government. So I was quite busy all the time. I think the record is I testified on like 40 bills in a week and presented them. You're just basically writing fact sheets or bill summaries, drafting amendments for members, and then tracking it through the process. And then you graduate to becoming an analyst, and you get a subject matter. You get one subject. So right now I'm the appropriations analyst. So I work for you, Chairman.
Thus why you're here.
That's what I hear. We prepare bills, we agenda set, we go over the bills you want to hear, and then the bills that get put on a agenda, we summarize, and then I present them in the committee. And then the big kahuna is the budget, obviously.
So each committee has an analyst who specializes in that, so that the assistant analysts who have multiple committees, they aren't too freaked out because they know nothing about economics and they're on Ways and Means.
Exactly. I didn't know anything about taxes when I was on Ways and Means, and I didn't know anything about education when I was on education. But you're trying to get a flavor of just the legislative process and how to be a research analyst. You're supposed to basically watch the analysts and see how they prepare for the job. Every analyst, what I love about the research department is every analyst does the job differently, but it all comes out to be the same product. Mm-hmm. So I tell my assistant analysts, you should be watching your analysts, and then when you become an analyst, you take what you like from them, what they did, and you don't like what you did, and then make it your own.
Do you get many of your analysts jumping ship and winding up in different agencies or leaving, or where do they go? I mean, is there a life after analyst?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have, I call it the poaching ground. We're very much during the fall season. I'll lose a few people every year just because they're getting poached to either partisan staff because they want to make the jump, or they'll get poached to agencies or lobbying firms and stuff like that. It's a good launching pad. People usually go to research, so then they build up their credential and skill, and then they leave. I'm a lifer.
Well, that's good. Hey, I get those pensions. That's my philosophy.
21 years.
So I guess you've already kind of touched on this, but maybe to recap. So what advice would you give to somebody who would want to go down your career path?
Honestly, you just have to join either the PAGE program or the intern program because it's your gateway. And you can learn the legislative process, and you can learn if you actually want to be here. When I became a PAGE, I instantly fell in love with the place and the institution. I knew I wanted to be here for a while. So you need to make sure you actually want to be here because it's such a unique place to work. But once you do, then you can learn the legislative process and learn the skills to gradually OPEB.
So as an aside question, you've worked in both the House and the Senate.
Yes, sir.
Which do you like better?
The Senate, sir.
Because it's like a library and not a zoo, or
I just like the Senate, and I just love the Senate. It's done amazing things for me personally and professionally, and I just owe gratitude to it.
Yeah. Just for the students, I've spent like half my time in both, and I've been here like 18 years, and the House is a lot more fun. It's disorderly, it's riotous, there's controversy. Whereas most senators, I think, have been in the House already, so they've already gotten a lot of the fire out of themselves. They suddenly realize that on almost every bill, everybody's mind is made up before they even come to the floor. So arguing, debating is really, just useless. And, so just get up there, give your best 1-minute soundbite for the record, and then get back down and do those emails, because we get a lot of emails as legislators. All right, let me now move on to Paulino Valerio, and he is the Chief of Staff for the Democrat Party. Again, currently the minority party, keep our fingers crossed. But so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Paulino Valerio, Chief of Staff for the Senate Democrats. Like most of the people here, born and raised in Phoenix. I like to run. I joined politics as happenstance like most people. I live in Goodyear. I have pets, which is like cat herding because they're cats, and the job also requires a fair amount of that. And child of immigrants, and grew up in the area with just that unique perspective of binational experiences, and growing up in Phoenix and seeing it transform has been a really cool thing to experience, and I really enjoyed the job.
So I guess the thing would be, why don't you explain what you do? I mean, I assume in many ways it's similar to Josh, but in other ways it's different. So
yes, it's very similar. I'm responsible, like Josh, with executing the vision of the leadership. The interesting piece is how similar the two roles are and how different they are, because we are 1 seat away from a split chamber and then 2 away from a majority. So a lot of the strategy and crafting a vision for the leadership and the members is also figuring out the leverage in the end to make these priorities happen. And we have a set of aspirational priorities that we say once we're in the majority, we'll do X, Y, and Z, and then realistic priorities of like, okay, these are the things we can actually get done, but with the caveat that we all have to be together and then pick off 2 Republicans to do that. And that is tremendously uphill. That is one of the things that keep me up at night and keep us all employed, I guess. But and then the other one is just figuring out where those common spaces are. And a lot of what we pass out of the chamber is bipartisan, has a lot of support. It doesn't get a lot of attention. And that is the bulk of what we do, the day-to-day operation, the function of government, the stability that provides for health and human services and public education. And then the pieces that have the controversy, they're a small percentage, but they're significant ones. And that's what dominates most of my time. So in crafting those priorities, I also have to set a lot of expectation for members. I get ignited and excited members, but they get voted into the minority party, which we've been in for a very long time. So there is a series of expectation setting with members as well about like, hey, these are the things you campaigned on, and now these are the things you're going to govern. The part that I appreciate in the role is helping mold the lawmaker, both professionally and personally, to kind of change those hats so that they can understand government, they can understand the perspective of agencies, and be thoughtful policymakers in that.
Now, I guess the majority party, I guess members kind of have the advantage of, their first term, they're vice chairs, and then they pretty much move on to chairmanships, and they get a lot of their bills passed and everything. But the minority party, which has been the minority here for, 16 years, whatever, or more than that, I'm sorry, I was thinking of Democrat governor, but I don't even know when there's been a Democrat. So is there frustration? Is there burnout? Do you have to kind of help some members get through that?
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of management of expectations with members, especially when they're newly elected. On the big issues, yes, there's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of passion, right? These individuals get elected every other year and they get a new set. It's unique for the Senate because there's more stability and crossover, but I was employed by the Senate at a time when it had a very large freshman class, which is unique for the Senate. The other piece that becomes, I guess, interesting or a tool that we can use is because we don't have the chamber and the dais and that gavel, we can also watch and observe some of the instances that happen with a newly elected chairman who has not served before and kind of backseat policy make. And that gives us some ammunition for the defense and the offense on policy positions, and taking the opportunity to learn from those processes. A lot of my members are newer in terms of being in policy making, but they come from a long line of Democrats as well who have been planning and thinking of ways to strategize if they were in the majority. So there's that anticipation for something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's unique because we get to watch and observe what the other party does, and we also get to take notes on, maybe we'll do this differently, or we'll make sure that the members are prepared for this vote or this policy issue that comes up.
So from what you said, I got the opinion that your life's goal was not to be the minority party chief of staff. So what happenstance happened here there?
Oh, yeah. I didn't, frankly, know the legislature existed growing up. I grew up in Phoenix, never really came to the Capitol until it was time to interview for the legislative internship, which I did in college. I went to U of A and I majored in molecular cellular biology. I was pre-med, and I did it because I was applying for medical school at the time, which was very expensive, and I was looking for something that gave me a different experience and that paid. That's the other piece. The legislative internship pays. So it was fantastic. So this was my first time coming to the Capitol. I had been in organizing before, but I never got to enter the building. And that was a really, really unique experience. From the internship, I did a couple of campaigns and then worked for the Department of Education as an agency, but in a nonpartisan role. And then from there, I moved to the House of Representatives in a partisan role.
It's interesting you mentioned how just some weird thing suddenly changed your life. And not to focus on the moderator, but real quick, it's so important that students understand that some wild, unexpected thing will occur that will totally change the entire course of your life. Back when I was 16, I was walking down the street in Queens, New York, and I saw this storefront, Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. At the time, public service was so screwed up in New York, this is back in the 60s, that communities started their own volunteer ambulance corps because the wait for a city ambulance was long and life-threatening. And it said volunteers needed, and I figured, well, I'm 16, but I can help, maybe I'll answer phones. And I walked in, and like, they made me an ambulance attendant, with like 40 hours of Red Cross training. But the two things that totally changed my life from just walking in that door that one day on a whim was A, that's where I met my wife, who I've been married to for 48 years now, and B, because police responded to a lot of the ambulance calls, and they used to come in and have coffee, I got to know and like police, and I wound up being a cop for 20 years. So same thing is true of, college students, that you can walk in here and suddenly, goodbye, high class, filthy, rich surgeon career, and hello to minority leader, chief of staff. All right. So what would you, well, again, we've kind of gone over this, but would you want to add anything to what you would say to students who might be interested in following your lead?
I would say to be open to any opportunity that's there. Meet and introduce yourself, ask for help. It's really interesting to have a path set and allow that to be something that motivates you, but just allow for the space to diverge a little bit from that path and take either the scenic route or the direct route, but be open to things changing because they do. That's just a product of life. And to ask for help and to connect with others and build relationships, because that's what's critical. Mm-hmm. This is an industry, but like all fields really, that's based off of relationships. So to be open to those things and be open for your experiences to change and your path to change.
Mm-hmm. And you had actually triggered another piece of advice that I used to give it to my undergraduate students, but which is so unbelievably true. The two courses that prepared me most for being a legislator are research methodology and statistics. And both courses I dreaded taking when I was in school. And then when I wound up teaching at ASU, I got my doctorate in criminal justice, and I moved here and I started teaching in justice studies of all places, which is kind of more the minority. but I was the junior person, so they had me doing research methodology and statistics courses, and I really learned it then. And it is so useful, especially the research methodology, to these kind of jobs, or for that matter, any job, because those skills, I don't care if you're planning to buy a new car or you're a research staffer, here at the legislature, knowing how to do the research and knowing how to do statistics is important. So take them before you become pages and interns. All right, let's get to the closing kind of partisan type questions. So let me first ask our non-partisan staff. Let's start with Jenna. So is it difficult to stay away from the partisanship and stay nonpartisan, and how do you cope with that?
I think early on, sometimes it's a little difficult because a lot of times people who come down here are really interested in politics and they usually have some strong opinions. And you're going to see, lawmaking in its purest form, a lot of controversial topics. And sometimes it's hard to just remove yourself from that conversation and just be a witness to it, but not a participant in the lawmaking process. So I think at first, with a lot of interns and pages, it can sometimes be difficult, but I always try to teach my interns and pages to master the art of nonpartisanship, sure, to be able to serve both parties equally, and when it's time or you're in a position to offer your opinion or your side, then you'll be ready to do so. But by being nonpartisan, you can learn both sides equally, and I think it actually strengthens your ability to serve in whatever partisan role if you move it that way.
Now, some of your interns, though, go to the minority-majority staff. So do you basically, send the Republicans to the majority, and I guess there you would kind of wean them?
We do kind of do that. In the interview process, they select their top picks for where they would like to be placed, and we do have a Democratic staff and a Republican staff box. Okay. So.
Now, in your position as Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, do members ever try to have you use that power or that role for a partisan way? And if they do, how do you politely tell them I can't do that?
Sometimes we'll get some requests to do things that might fall a little bit on the partisan side, but we my boss and I have really built up our office, the expectations of our staff of what we can do and what we can't do. And we also have a really great relationship with the partisan staff offices. So when we get in a pinch or something, we can always talk to them and they help us navigate it. Sometimes people will want us to lean partisan, but we're able to kind of readjust and
Sure.
stay there in the middle.
And I would assume if you ever wound up doing that, you'd lose a lot of your credibility anyway.
Exactly.
Liam, how about you? The partisan, nonpartisan path, staying on the right side of a line.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was always raised in the house where you didn't talk politics. Like, it was rude to talk politics, even in the house. So I think I was, like, destined to be nonpartisan staff. It gets difficult, obviously. Everybody's human, and they all have opinions. So, but whenever I hire a staffer or, promote a staffer, I always tell them, when you step through the doors of the Senate, you sacrifice that opinion. That, you're getting paid here to make nonpartisan analysis and research. So that's very important to me. And that's been important to me since I took over. And as I was just a research analyst back in early in my career, members like to make jabs and try to get me to break my nonpartisan role. But I just say, I have the boilerplate language of, well, I can't help you with that, but I can point you to either Josh's staff or Paulina's staff.
So would the most common attempt to make nonpartisan research people partisan attempts to basically influence your reports?
Absolutely. I think it happens actually probably 2 to 3 times a year. I'll get a member upset with how a fact sheet is written or bill summary is written. It happened actually a few weeks ago, and they'll say, no, it's not this, it's this. And then I'll review it, and then I look at it and I go, no, actually, the bill says this, and that's why the fact sheet is accurate. And I do have those conversations with members a lot, actually. And I stick to my guns, and I always say, we're nonpartisan. We don't write position papers. We write fact sheets based off that.
See this good quote. All right. So let's get to our, our partisan type thing. We already discussed some of the differences partisan wise, but I guess the question is, on certain key issues, the roof gets blown off this building. It just recently did over, motions on the floor on a controversial issue. So does this create some sort of a difficult barrier that, lasts for a certain amount of time and dissolves, or you guys have to work together, so how does that affect your working relationship?
Well, generally, I don't think it does affect our working relationship. I've been, had the benefit of working with counterparts in the House and then even now in the Senate that we work well together. Our members will duke it out on the floor and in the media and on social media, but we still have to work together. There's a number of things that Paulino and I are working together on right now that are, like he mentioned, there's so much of what we do down here is bipartisan. And, I always say let's agree to disagree. Let's not be disagreeable. Let's try to have decorum. And the other thing is, no matter what fight we're going through, that may seem like the whole world is, crumbling around us, but then next week we still got to work together. And so you really can't take it personally.
Excellent mob mentality. So it's good.
Likewise, I don't take any of it personally, preserve the relationships, and it's really consistent with what good mentors have taught me, good colleagues have taught me as well, is that collaborative relationship building. And it's good to have good conversations and get along when you're agreeing. I think what really tests your assets as a professional and as a person is when you're disagreeing and you have motions and you have fights and you have passionate members. And I've benefited very largely because of my colleagues who we're all professionals. We don't take it personally, and we have to continue the operations because we're in the job, right? We're not the elected official. We are responsible and tasked with the vision and directing and executing the vision of the members, but we're also responsible with the day-to-day operations. And a lot of it is administrative, and there are not really spaces for that for us to visit. And so I'm thankful to be staff and not a member.
That sounds good. Salary-wise, I'm certainly would rather be staff, but
That's right.
special use staff, but rather. And I would agree with that last sentiment. Again, I've been here like 18 years, and if I and I've had, I'm sure at least half the members have done things that, to me personally, that were, politically offensive, not personally offensive, but, sticking you with, saying things, or, saying they're going to vote, not vote for a bill. And yeah, I mean, if you hold those grudges, I mean, if I held those grudges, like half the members I wouldn't be speaking to, and I couldn't be an effective legislator. Plus, I'd be miserable, uncomfortable when I walked into a room and they're there. Something that you don't want to subject yourself to. So, and I'm glad to see at the staff level that is the rule, because otherwise we wouldn't function, because without staff, we would just be, 30 cats, screaming at each other and clawing up there, without any heat, light, or coffee from Pages. So that's good. Well, I want to thank the four of you for bearing your lives and your souls here. I'm sure that the students will get a lot out of it, because there was a lot of really great kind of informal advice that was imparted to them, and formal advice. So students, watch this tape. I'll probably have a quiz on it. And if you want to succeed in life, wait a week and watch it again, because the rest of it will sink in then. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.